All right, welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, how are you doing as we watch the leaves fall? I have a mess in my yard. I don't know if you do, but
Yes,
here we
I
are
do
in
too. I do
true
too.
autumn fashion. It's a
So
mess.
is
It's
is
terrible.
this is this like a metaphor? I really should be able to grasp the difference between metaphor and analogy, and I've looked it up like 700 times. But are the leaves falling off the trees a metaphor for our democracy?
Oh gosh. Well, yes, I would agree. And as I'm trying not to have a toxic positivity approach or take any hopium, let me just say I read a great article that was talking about this horticulturist that was talking about leaves falling. And even if you don't sweep, rake, blow those leaves, they still have nutrients that go back into the soil
Right,
of the root
right.
to help the tree grow again. That's my hope. That's my intention. That's my pragmatic approach is that yes, it's falling, but maybe it can provide nutrients for whatever form we come out as next. Who
Okay,
knows?
I like
Who
that. So
knows?
that's a reframe. So instead of death, it is rebirth.
Yeah, or at least nutrients at the very least.
Nutrients. Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
very least. So we'll see. We'll see. But I will say we had to drive to and through Delaware a couple weekends ago, and the turning, we must have had it timed perfectly where the turning was just incredible on the colors. I mean, many of the trees look like matches. That's what Kendrick called it. He said they look like matches where
Mm.
they were like red going into yellow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were just incredible, incredible. But I went to school in the Shenandoah Valley where, people would fly in to, do photography in that area. So it's beautiful, but sometimes it's painful if you talk about our democracy. So I'm picking up
Yes.
what you're putting down, picking up what you're
Yeah. Yeah.
so anyway, let's get into the word of the week. Dr. Lisa, it sounds like you have a good one.
Yes. So this week's word of the week is sludge, and I came across it at in a unsurprisingly when listening to a podcast. And so it's not like we don't know what the word sludge means, right? But it was used in a very particular context. So the pod was called, I forget which series it was, but the name of this particular episode was um your call is important to us. And so since I have a hate relationship with call centers and those systems that you end up, circling frustratingly for several hours, I wanted to listen to it. So I'd recently had a friend of mine was applying for medical leave here in Colorado. We have a state plan that gives you paid medical leave of up to 12 weeks, and she was not able to call in because of her circumstances. And so I called in for her and got extremely frustrated. I think it took me 4 times to get hold of a human, and I got disconnected twice before I'd gotten hold of a human. So this podcast landed in my feed timely. Anyway, so sludge is a term that refers to all of the techniques that call centers, so businesses that have call centers, use to frustrate you, the caller. So it's actually a term that is used. It's actually a strategy that is employed. So every time you feel like you're in a doom loop, pressing buttons to get to the next menu, not getting what you want, dead ending and then getting cut off, or just the call drops, or they're like, I can't help you, let me connect you to another person, and then they connect you to another person, and they're like, I can't help you, let me connect you to another person, and that person is the first person you spoke to, and you're kind of ping-ponging backwards and forwards, and then or no one can specifically answer your question. All of that in the industry is called sludge. And so one of the interviewees on this podcast was a person who used to work in the call center industry, because it's also really proprietary and locked down. And so this person left the industry and actually essentially whistle blew on it. Um, and I just thought that it was a really interesting concept because I think it is broadly applicable. beyond the call center environment. But when you're getting frustrated and you say to yourself, F it, I'm just not going to call to get this product fixed or to get my warranty or to get this question answered, that is the goal of Sludge. The company is trying to wear you out, and their business model is built on that a percentage of people will just throw their hands up in the air and say, I'm just not going to bother, right? So that's the intention of it. And so that's the word sludge. And it's essentially like you're wading through all of this shit, right? And all of this mud and gunk and debris to just get to something that you are owed, right? Through the customer service system. So have you heard of, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the word sludge, but have you heard of it in that context, Donna?
Oh my gosh. I had not heard of the word. Once again, Lisa, I think our word of the week really does a great job at not only exposing people to new words, but giving folks words to describe what they've already experienced in the
Yeah.
past
Yeah.
and making it more of a common experience rather than a one-off experience. So with the sludge piece, two in particular things that I'm thinking of, and I'm trying not to expand this to its own phase in and of itself because all of these examples came to mind. But for example, I've had very close friends to me who gave up, for example, on pursuing more VA benefits that they were entitled
Okay.
to
Okay.
because of the sludge, where
Yep.
exactly to your point, oh, well, you gave me this form to fill out the first time. I brought it back to you. When I brought it back, you said it's not the right form. I need a different form. And then I
Mm-hmm.
need to fill that out. Or my caseworker, I've now run through 5 different caseworkers in 4 weeks who knows my story here.
Right.
Those types of things. Or, for example, when I went to have my home refinanced because I got it was a pretty decent interest rate when I first bought my home at the time, given that it was, just past COVID, et cetera, et cetera. But I knew I was going to refinance in a few, in a week, in a year or so. When I went back to refinance my home, again, to your point, they were banking on a certain number of people to not want to engage in the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, I know you want it to go, 2 percentage points down from what it is, and that's possible for you, but only if you have a machete large enough to get through the red tape around here.
Right.
And they bank on people not being willing to do that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm the person that, oh, no, I don't like red tape. I don't like paperwork. I don't like all these administrative things, but I've been on the other side of desk being the administrator that had to make certain things happen. And so, given that, I'm not intimidated by it in ways that other people would be, right? So when I went
Mm-hmm.
to refinance my home and the lady on the other end of the phone was shocked that, first of all, let me be clear. I'm an electronic hoarder, y'all. If y'all ask me for a document from 1997, I might have it, right? Well, give it and properly labeled and in the folder where it needs to be found. So while I'm on the phone with her, she thought that she was going to hang up and I would fall off somewhere into the ether and not be able to respond to what she needed. I said, hold on a second. You need 5 documents. Click, 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 check your email.
Yeah. Excellent.
You don't get to hang up on me because you're used to other people that may not. I mean, I was an executive assistant in a former life, y'all. So for me, I realized that I have a little more detail oriented background that makes sludge less intimidating to me. But I keep thinking to myself, for someone that has a background like myself that doesn't mind the paperwork or the paper shuffling or the filling out the online form, and it's still mind boggling to me, and then add in the
Yeah. Yeah.
technology piece for a lot of processes. I think the most frustrating sludge that we've ever experienced as a business, as a consulting firm, is I won't rat out the name of the city, but it was a particular city where we had done training for, and it literally took us, what, 9 months to get major checks that we had already done the services for. And
Mm-hmm.
thank goodness I had someone on my staff who, to your point, had been on the other side of things where she had worked on with a call center many years ago and knew how things work. Where, for example, when she called them to track down our check And they said, okay, yeah, sure, we're supposed to send your check to Odenton, Maryland, da 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 da. And my person said, hold up. You don't even have the right address because my person, my organization has never been based in Odenton, Maryland. You just randomly put that in there to say the check's in the mail to buy some more
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
or being hung up on, or being told that everyone is at lunch, or be and those types of things where it's like by the end of it, she literally had to drive to that city to go physically pick up paper checks for work that we had done 9 months ago.
Yeah. Not many people are going to want to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So by the time she got to the end of the process, she's like, no, no, no. This is just on principle. I want to go because they bank on small businesses who they claim they want to support and work
Yeah.
with to not want to deal with the sludge, especially after you've already provided the services.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I would just say dig in, people. Don't let the system beat you because that's what it's intended to do. Like it's by design to
That's
frustrate you.
exactly right.
And, yeah, you don't have unlimited time. So maybe you can't call back today, but you could maybe call back tomorrow and then the next day, right? And you just have to keep doing that. And it is annoying, it is frustrating, but that sludge is intended to slow you down. So you give up. And everything you said, Shauna, made me think about the discussions you and I have had about the one big beautiful bill or the one big ugly bill and all of these Medicaid work requirements. And part of it is a paperwork issue, right? Because they're requiring additional paperwork. Paperwork needs to be filed more frequently, but they're not funding additional staff to manage that increase. And so for gig workers,
Mm,
especially who will have a hard time demonstrating that they've worked the required amount of hours, that's going to mean a significant number of people, millions of people will get dropped from Medicaid. And that's the
yes.
intention, right? So it's not about fraud, waste, and abuse. It's about how can we slow down the mechanisms that enable eligible people to get Medicaid. Here's what we'll do. We'll bureaucratically kill them, right? And we'll put sludge into the system. And that's how we'll save money. So it's all calculated. So it's not just the call center, which is what I thought. So beware the sludge is what I would say.
Exactly. All right, Lisa, what do we have for phase one? I know there's some sludge in there. I'm sure there's
Oh
got to
yeah.
be some sludge in there.
Well, phase one is very uplifting. No. Okay, so I mean, I am not a national security expert by any means, but I am outraged and shocked the degree to which our media is not effectively covering or covering at all the extrajudicial killings that have been happening in the Caribbean and now in the Pacific. So, as of the time of recording, I think we're up to 72 people have been killed. Um, and I just wanted to I just wanted to talk about it. I'm going to include an article in the show notes that gives you a timeline. But essentially, just quickly here, um, the first strike was back on September 2nd and it killed 11 people. And then 2 days later, there was a report given to Congress per the 1973 War Powers Resolution, right? And so that War Powers Resolution was created by Nixon. Well, sorry, it wasn't created by Nixon. It was created in response to Nixon and the Vietnam War because there was never actually a congressional declaration of war for Vietnam. And so the intention was to curb executive powers through this War Powers Resolution. But law schmore, who cares about that, right? So then on October 2nd, the president declares the existence of an armed conflict. It's actually called, a non-international armed conflict. And what that means is that the drug cartels that this have been designated terrorists cannot be state actors because if they are state actors under the guidance of Maduro in Venezuela, then it can't be a non-international armed conflict. So I've been trying to educate myself here on this issue, right? So they're basically speaking out of two sides of their mouth, and what they're saying is contradictory. And I was so frustrated with NPR this morning, Shauna, because they're reporting on this because there was another bombing today or yesterday, I think. And NPR was like, well, some experts have said that they might not be legal. it's not some experts. It's pretty much all of the experts, right? The people who are experts in laws of war, both domestically and internationally, people at the UN, people who used to work at the State Department, people who've worked in the national security industry. Like, they're all basically saying there's a word for this: premeditated killing of a person that has not been tried or found guilty of any crime. It is murder. Sorry, I'm shouting into the microphone. Because this is why I don't understand why people aren't up in arms. Like, what are we doing? We are murdering people. Because even if you say that these individuals who are on these boats are drug smugglers, even if that is true, the consequence of smuggling drugs is not the death penalty without a trial, right? So you are killing people, you are murdering people extrajudicially, and people in the United States are just shrug, right? And Congress is like, I'm satisfied, despite the fact that we're now beyond the 60 days of the War Powers Resolution, which are at 60 days, conflict is supposed to cease unless there's a declaration of war by Congress. Blown past that because that was November 3rd, right? No evidence has been provided about who these people are, whether they were actually smuggling drugs. And then the dumbest shit, Shauna, right? The administration is saying that each boat that they have blown up and murdered those people would save 25,000 Americans. It's just patently false. One, they're likely not transporting fentanyl. It's probably cocaine, right? And fentanyl deaths in 2023 was 72,776. And you have blown up, that would be 3 boats, right? To get you to 25,000. And you far exceeded that. And all overdose deaths in 2023 was 105,000. And 29,000 of those were from cocaine. And that's NIH data. So anyway, so I just wanted to talk to you about it because I'm like, the United States is murdering foreign nationals in boats without providing any evidence, without any trial, without any due process, and apparently that's okay. So I'm wondering if you have feelings, because I have a lot of them.
Oh, well, here's the thing though, and I hate to zoom out to, the 30,000-foot view, but again, I, yes, it bothers me, it concerns me, it maddens me that rules don't seem to apply to this administration. Rules only apply to others or people that they disagree with, which is the whole point of fascism, which is the whole point of authoritarianism, is that rules don't apply. And to your point around, I always love when you say you educated yourself on XYZ, because guess what? They're banking on folks not educating themselves on any of this and
Right,
not and
right,
assuming that those numbers are valid. And
right,
oh, well, they'll buy it. They're stupid enough to buy these numbers that, oh, we'll save this many by doing that. No, you actually won't, and you haven't. And so, with that, it's this constant feed of, if we give them some numbers that either convince them or overwhelm them, then supporters will believe
mm-hmm.
that we're doing the right thing. And you and I are not buying it and have never bought it from them. And so with that, again, a issue of, I don't know if it's particularly due process, but certainly no process. When it comes to this, that is the antithesis of democracy
Yeah,
and has always been of no process. I get to tell you what to do and how to do it. One of the things that this reminds me of, so I think I've shared this on the podcast before, but I'm in a fellowship right now, and we're still in the conflict management, conflict transformation, conflict narrative course. We're getting close to the end now. And the way conflict is described in this course is two or more different ideas trying to share the same space. And one of the questions that was asked in the conflict class, and it's been brought up almost every session within this course, is what happens when conflict is resolved with death and destruction?
mm-hmm.
I don't agree with you. You don't agree with me. So you get to eliminate me or
Right.
vice versa. And
Right.
that quote unquote resolves or at least manages the conflict. Well, that's how wars start. Hello, we know that
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
But to that end, that's what this feels like. And let's just obliterate and remove certain people from existing. So then we don't have the friction. And on top of that, we continue to build power. It's like a monster that keeps eating to get more energy. It continues to get more energy by continuing to eliminate folks. And the more that we allow it, the more comfortable it becomes until finally, hello, we go back to Isabel Wilkerson's cast, where
Right.
now we're dealing with countries that decide that there is no due process and countries that decide they're going to flex their power by eliminating people rather than a process or any process. Ultimate power corrupts, what is it? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what it is. That's where we are. That is corruption.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's what we would, United States Americans would look at other countries and say that's what other quote unquote
that's
bad
exactly right.
countries
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, well, and that's the thing. The judgment is always harsher when it's looking outwardly.
Hmm.
It's, oh well, we can justify this by, but no one else can. Or we can
Right.
justify this, but no, shame on these other countries that do XYZ. Like I saw this was, I believe it was yesterday, Lisa, where to your point around the hypocrisy of that flip, it was an AI generated video where it was a woman on the continent of Africa that was talking about the US the way the US has talked about the continent, right? So it's,
Mm.
oh well, you don't want to go there because we that you'll there are starving kids in the United States right now, which is actually a fact. Like
Yep.
oh, where it flips the stereotype because that's always been a
Hmm.
stereotype by the continent of Africa. It flips the stereotype to the truth of the US. Anybody that you ask of a certain age in this country would try to make it seem like people are starving in Africa. But, oh, well, we're justified in cutting the snap and the wick in the United States. The hypocrisy is very loud, very loud. And I feel this the same
Hmm.
way with this is that unlimited force is okay based on this administration, but not okay for anyone else to impose against us or any of our allies if we have any left.
Right, right. And
That's
there,
not
I
okay.
mean, President
That's undefeated.
Obama had some questionable strikes, Libya
Mhm.
in particular, and he ordered the killing of a U.S. citizen who had there was evidence that he was planning an attack. So there, it's not that it's just this administration, but this administration, this is so egregious, and that there is no one, media, Congress, Senate, willing to say, well, you're one, violating the War Powers Resolution, you're violating the law, and two, you're literally murdering people, right? And
Yes, yes.
I guess I understand that the average person isn't paying attention to national security, is probably just thinking, well, they're drug dealers, who cares, right? But there's not even proof that they're drug dealers. And as I said earlier, it doesn't even matter if they are, right? You don't just get to unilaterally murder people because you think they're dealing in drugs, right? Like,
That's
so
right.
then I just think about the the doors that this opens when we've also got military, as we've talked about before, on the streets in US cities. We have got violations of both domestic and international law happening with these
That's
boat
right.
assaults. And what is the general public's inattention
Uh-huh.
to these egregious violations of law? Where is that taking us, right? Like, what is
Mhm.
that teeing up in terms of where we
Mhm.
might be in 6 months? And yeah, it feels very chilling. And
Oh, yeah.
very few people. I understand you're not getting your SNAP benefits. You don't give a shit about whether people are being bombed on boats, right? And I do get
Right.
that. But there are people that have the time and the bandwidth to give a shit, and they don't appear to be giving a shit, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's where I just wanted to kind of flag it and call attention to it. Like, pay attention, read up on this if you have not thus far done that prior to listening to this pod.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and to your point, it's those of us who do have the bandwidth, making sure that we get weary in that, right? That we'll
Hmm.
get weary in paying attention to what's going on, not to the point of overwhelm, because we can get there, and I've been there at points where it's like, okay, enough information. I got too much now. But to stay aware of these points, because again, part of it is the lack of attention grab that you're bringing up. It's, oh, let's overwhelm them so they won't notice this,
Right,
or let's
right.
overwhelm them with flooding folks with information so we don't notice that. So I appreciate your call to, hey, don't get overwhelmed, pay attention to this, follow this, interrupt this where you can, whether it's contacting your representative or
Hmm.
whomever, but don't let it slide. I
Right.
feel we're way beyond giving this administration an inch and them taking a mile. It's like giving them
Yeah.
nothing, they're taking yards and yards. I mean, just on and on and on and on. Unlimited power. No, not
Right.
unlimited power. So
Right. If you can murder people in boats in the Caribbean, what's to stop you from murdering drug dealers right here in the United States,
right
right?
here, right here,
And
exactly.
before we transition to phase two, I want to end on this delightful quote. So this was
Uh,
an October 23rd quote from the president when
mhm.
asked about whether or not there was going to be war with Venezuela. He said, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we are going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country, okay? We are going to
Mhm,
kill them, you know? They are going to
mhm,
be like dead.
mhm.
President of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So
Normalizing, normalizing.
they are going to be like dead. So
So
I
disgusting.
feel like,
So
yeah, it's
disgusting.
disgusting. So, anywho, with that, let's transition into phase two.
So, oh, we have no shortage. We have no shortage of disgusting stuff, right? No shortage of disgusting
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm.
But I want to let's share a little bit about things that could be disgusting, given that we're just few hours away here, maybe 2 days away from Thanksgiving here in the US. And, let's go down the list of things that oftentimes most people think about with Thanksgiving. We're thinking about possibly travel if we're going somewhere or if someone's coming to us. We're thinking about some downtime. We're thinking about hopefully some really good food, some meals on the table, hopefully entertaining each other as family, friends, chosen family, whomever you like around you. Well, Thanksgiving might not be giving it this year, Lisa, because if we're talking about the two topics of travel and food, that ain't it right now. We know that especially air travel has been struggling. And guess what? Because we live in systems, if air traffic is struggling, air travel is struggling, then that also means people may be choosing not to travel via air. They may be traveling in other ways, which puts strains on yet other systems, right? So if Shauna wants to fly to see Lisa in Colorado, but her flight keeps getting canceled. And for some strange reason, she decides to jump on a train or drive herself or do whatever, then that puts strain on other systems, right? Um, then fast forward to the food issue. Hello. We know that there has been a major issue, multiple issues concerning the cost of living broadly, but then also when it comes to the hikes in food cost, as well as the hits to SNAP, WIC, and other resources that are needed to put food on the proverbial table and literal table here. Well, if both of those systems are struggling, then it's going to be interesting Thanksgiving, y'all, right? Now, what really struck me, Lisa, and this is the one where I knew that you would probably have like this visceral reaction of, I just want to punch through the computer yet again, is that in response to all the Democratic wins that we just had and talked about previously, y'all's president starts talking about the cost of living and specifically how Thanksgiving meals sold at Walmart were claimed to be cheaper this year, right? Now, number one, I double dog dare anybody to give me and Lisa evidence that y'all's president has ever eaten a Thanksgiving meal from Walmart to even be able to speak on this
Right.
issue. That's
Right.
number one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's number one. That's number one. Number two is, again, dealing with emotion over fact. The fact of the matter is, in previous years, if you were to purchase a Thanksgiving meal, a prepped Thanksgiving meal from Walmart, the price would be about $55, $60, depending on where you live. This year, it's about $45. So on the surface, y'all's president, who doesn't know or care about data, would say that Thanksgiving meals are cheaper this year. However, is it really cheaper if previously there were 21 items for Thanksgiving and now they're only offering 15? And who knows what the quality of that is and the amounts of those are, right? So no, it's technically not cheaper based on what's being provided. And also with just general groceries. Grocery prices are not, quote unquote, way down as he suggests. In fact, there are at least 12 categories of food items that are regularly depended on that are up this year. And so with that, I'm not saying, because I'm a very grateful person. I mean, I say it all the time jokingly, but yet I'm quite literal. I don't care if all I get is a large fry and a sweet tea from McDonald's for my Thanksgiving dinner. I'm going to be grateful for it. However, this is a Thanksgiving with limitations that did not have to be. I'm thinking too, Lisa, our hearts are always with food banks year round anyway. Food banks are being drained right now.
Yep.
I oftentimes meet my sons at their local public library where they have one of those little like a little small food pantry that's right there beside the
Mm-hmm.
library. People can drop things off or pick things up. On Monday, when I went to pick them up, um, all the shelves were full. People even had plastic bags like sitting around the little building because they couldn't fit everything in. I took one of my sons to a practice and came back 2 hours later, and all that food was gone. I passed by it and there were only a few cans on the shelves.
Mm.
That was quite telling to me, Lisa. It was quite telling. That area is monitored. It has a camera on it, so forth. So I doubt very seriously that there was anything
Right.
bad going on. People had a need, right?
Yep.
And so, given that, my heart breaks knowing that you know, I'm probably going to be very full and napping on my couch, and other people
Mm-hmm.
will not be. That just breaks my heart. I spent, not this weekend, but last week, when I was picking up my own groceries, I picked up just a few staples like rice and other things so I could drop off at our food bank that's down the road from my boys' school, because I'm trying to be conservative myself, because we all got to stay afloat, but at the same time, my heart breaks. And so I feel the need to do something, even if it's a $5 bag of rice. Um, but yeah, Lisa, Thanksgiving is and should land differently. And my hope is that it brings communities together in ways that shouldn't be necessary, but hopefully
Mm-hmm.
there's still a positive outcome from those communities getting tighter. But I'm always thinking of pragmatist and ideal. Pragmatist is, we are having to maneuver through this, but ideal, it shouldn't have to be this way and
Right.
still doesn't have to be this way. But
Right.
how was Thanksgiving landing on you?
Well, I did see that Walmart thing. And the other piece I think was that it's all Walmart branded items, great value, I think, whereas last year it
Mhm,
had
that's
some
right.
name brands in there, so it's not just the number that has reduced, it's also, to your point, the quality. Although I don't know how bad quality great value is, but certainly it would be cheaper for Walmart to provide that. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I
Hmm.
just, inflation is always there. There's always inflation because you don't want deflation, right? And so even if Kamala Harris were president, we would still have inflation right now. I think the
That's right.
difference is that this current administration has done absolutely nothing to try and slow the increase,
Hmm.
right? It is slowing, but a lot of that is really thanks to President Biden and what his team did in kind of landing the plane without a recession during the post-COVID experience. And, all of the stuff this administration is doing with layoffs and tariffs and kind of the reneging on funding, obviously, most recently, the shutdown and the refusal to fund SNAP, that's all contributing. So it's choices that have been made that have just exacerbated the already
Mhm.
difficult economic landscape that he
Mhm.
inherited. And I
That's
do
right.
think, I mean, this is what a lot of anti-Trumpers across all points on the ideological spectrum say, is that the pain that people are feeling economically, as difficult as it is for them to feel it, is a feeling they need to have, particularly if they voted for him, right? Because they need to be able to connect the dots. And as you and I had talked about
Mm.
before, is for many of us, maybe even a majority of us, we are unable to make that dot connection unless we are personally impacted. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's
Absolutely.
I don't I don't know how I feel about that because I don't want people to economically suffer. I don't want people to feel like they um, can't afford a Thanksgiving meal to spend with their family or they can't travel somewhere, right? Like I don't necessarily want that.
Mhm.
And but I also want folks to understand that there are consequences to their voting or their not voting, right? And this is the
That's
consequence.
right.
So it's a really difficult kind of cognitive place to be because part of the whole thing was the shutdown was, well, if the Republicans and Trump had acquiesced and re-upped those
Mhm.
Affordable Care Act subsidies, then that would have been largely benefiting of them, right? It wouldn't
Mm.
Voters wouldn't be, oh, the Democrats saved us from a price increase on our Affordable Care Act premiums. It would be Trump and the Republicans reduced our healthcare costs. Like that's, how the brain works. Um, so, like preventing something from happening, like we don't, as the public, we don't have a good appreciation of what it means to not go through something because an action was taken that prevented that thing from happening, right? Like
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay. Hmm.
so with Thanksgiving and the costs of food and the travel, like there is certainly an argument there. I am unsure how I feel about it that okay, then you need to experience what it means to be under a government that you thought was in your corner, but also the day before they canceled SNAP payments, held, as we've talked about before, a Halloween party, which I got wrong. I said it was at the White House, but it was actually at Mar-a-Lago with the theme of the Great Gatsby,
That's right. That's
right?
right. Yep. Yep.
So, and they're also building a 300 million gold-plated ballroom while
Hmm.
taking away food benefits.
Hmm.
As though those food benefits, I think it's like what 300, it's not very much a month for a family of four. You're not buying caviar and all the shit that Fox News put out there. I mean, sure,
Hmm. Right. Right.
you could buy caviar, but that would be all you bought, right? And that's just not
Hmm.
practical or real. Um, and so I don't know. So I do think this will be interesting to see how are those dots being connected for people, particularly people who voted for this administration? Like, are they able to understand my economic pain is directly attributable to the current incumbent, while this current incumbent is likely gorging himself on some wonderful turkey dinner with all these fancy fancies, right?
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
I'm not feeling very optimistic that the dots you articulated at the beginning of this phase are going to be connected in a way that sustains through next November when we have an opportunity to actually kind of hold them accountable.
Well, and to your point with the connecting the dots piece of things. So I have not had faith that most people connect dots on how things work. But here's the thing. This is what I would it's sad. So let's say I need to vote. I need to, engage in activism, whatever it is that I need to do, let's say in a more ideal place, so that these things don't happen to the broader country, the broader community, my state, my location, etc. Right? I'm comfortable, and I might even be comfortable after this vote, but I care enough about other people to think systemically about how I'm going to cast my vote, right? All right, that ain't happening. All right, we know that. That's not happening in the US. And so let's fast forward to what actually happens is that I'm still, here we go, hopium again a little bit, Lisa. I still have hope that this isn't going to happen to me, but I see it encroaching a bit closer. Like maybe now it's happening not to me, but to a family member, not to me, but to a coworker, not to me, but to a fellow churchgoer or colleague or whoever it is. It's getting closer, but I still don't want to accept how that could possibly be closer to me than what I think, right? And
Right.
then we get to this third version of, oh, we got rid of XYZ. So when I went to use my benefits that I didn't realize were connected to that system that now are, it's now affecting me. Oh, dang. Now it still isn't even about the system. It's still about the individual me. So
Mm,
in all three of those categories, whether it's far distant, just caring about other people, it's getting closer, or it is me, it's all three of those still are never systemic.
right. Right.
They're never thinking about how you are one cog in the wheel of a larger system. None of the three. So, with especially with the story that I saw floating around where it was kind of like a what would you do type question, where it was the husband was on the phone talking to his sister who was a Trump supporter, voted for Trump, et cetera, et cetera. The sister's Wick and Snap got cut off. And so she was calling to ask the brother, hey, can you spot me grocery money for me and my kids? And the wife tells her husband, nah, they got to feel the pain because that's what they
Mm,
voted for.
okay.
Yeah, we got money in the bank. Yeah, we got groceries in our house. But at some point, there has to be this notion of proximity because you didn't get it. And even now, you still only get it in a limited way.
Right.
You now care because it affects you. You still would not care if it didn't affect you and it only affected your neighbor. You wouldn't care. You wouldn't care. So they're
Yeah.
still not caring about the system, they're caring about themselves. The selfishness of it all is just mind blowing.
Yeah, that's an interesting conundrum. So, like, what would you do in that scenario? I think I would probably give my sister-in-law money. I don't think I would withhold that.
If your sister-in-law called and was a MAGA supporter and
Yeah,
you
like if they'd voted for Trump and now their WIC had been cut or their SNAP had been cut, and that's a direct result of Trump unwilling to negotiate around rising healthcare costs, right? Like, choose your devil, I guess. I would
I'm
probably
I'm
give them
a
money.
I'm probably a very loving asshole. I would invite them to drop the kids off and make sure they have a great meal and send some things that only kids eat, and that's about it. Like
Okay.
that's literally the first thing I would think of doing.
So you
Because
d
it's
oh
it's
yeah,
not the kids' fault that their
right.
parents voted MAGA, but you still have to understand. Even your kids have to understand, mom, dad, why don't we have groceries in the house? Because my kids understand why we do have groceries in this house. My kids understand why the lights turn on and off every day. My kids
Mhm.
understand why there's gas in the car so I can take you here further and yon. They understand how that happens. There is no magic fairy that comes around and does this. I either have to work or there has to be some assistance from somewhere to make it happen, but it's not magic. Your kids have to understand that because guess what? If your kids don't understand that, they grow up to be you, the MAGA supporter and voter that still doesn't understand how systems work. So when do we interrupt the system of not understanding systems?
Yeah, I mean,
As heartless as that sounds, I know that sounds heartless as hell. I get that. But where do we interrupt the pattern uh, of lack of empathy
yeah.
for other people and systems? It
Well,
has
I
to
mean,
be interrupted somewhere.
and that's exactly what the many of the kind of never Trump formerly Republican pundits are saying. That's exactly this.
Oh,
You're kind of in this. You're in the same place as they are, right? Like the
uh-huh.
only way you will learn that you should not vote for this government again is if you personally feel the pain. And so, and we don't actually want Trump to re-up the healthcare subsidies. We want Trump to go to the Supreme Court to fight reinstating SNAP benefits, right? Like, because that looks awful. Like, we want him to do that. Like, he is fight. Well, he was, right? Because this was when the shutdown was happening. He was fighting to prevent the paying out of SNAP benefits while refusing to negotiate with Democrats to reinstate the Affordable Care Act subsidies, tax subsidies to reduce healthcare premiums. Like, how do you look at that person and say, that person is for me? That person has my
Right.
economic and health and welfare benefits at the center of what he does, while at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, he's hosting this Great Gatsby party at Mar-a-Lago, right? And building this
Mm-hmm.
ballroom. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, so you're in the same camp as all of these kind of like formerly Republican, small c conservatives who are like, there's not like the only learning that will happen is if an individual is individually negatively impacted. Because to your point, not system thinkers, right? Not thinking about
Mm-hmm.
the good of the whole.
No, no, not and not to be trusted to think about the good of the whole, because again, we're not talking about a first election here. We're talking about a two-term president
Yeah,
that has torn
yeah.
things up. So you've had one term to feel it, and you didn't feel it and or at least witness it, and it still did not change your viewpoint, and you voted again or not
It's
voted
highly
again.
predictable, right? Highly predictable that with the
Oh yeah.
situation that we're in. Like, and he was, I mean, that's the other thing. Maddeningly, like, it was out there that this was going to happen. Shouldn't be shocking to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
he
And they
just ignored
still
it.
and they still
Yeah.
did it. And which is why, as much as, it sounds like it's kind of like that nuance of the difference between being kind and being nice, right? So
Mm,
nice would be, oh, be nice and take the family and the kids food and leave them some money for groceries. Being kind is, even if I can't open the parents' eyes, I'm opening the kids' eyes to how systems work and how you can be negatively affected if you do not participate in said system. Because like I've said it about bullies, I've said it about assholes, I've said it about everybody. Little bullies grow up to be big bullies. Little assholes grow up to be big assholes. Little lack of empathy, hateful people grow up to be the exact same thing if we don't interrupt it. And I say that as an educator. When do you interrupt the pattern of behavior? So when that kid grows up and says, "Oh, I remember those, 3 months where it was really tough and we ate oatmeal every night because we didn't have anything else," they will grow up to, number one, probably hate oatmeal. Number two, to remember it because it becomes a core memory. And so whenever they see something like this that pops up on their computer screen or on the news that says that food is being threatened for other people, they will then care.
hopefully. Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, so in this scenario, I'm the nice person and you're the kind person because I would totally give my sister-in-law food because I think I would. So I'm your apparently your weak-kneed Democrat who caves because
Mm-mm.
people are in pain and I don't really want that to happen.
But
So
but we've had
regardless of who they voted
we've
for.
had that conversation though, Lisa. We've had that conversation though around the 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 short term fix versus the longer term
Yeah.
fix.
Yeah.
We've had that when we talked about shelters, and we've talked about this with
Hmm.
other issues where you're the person that's like, let's fix it right now, and I'm like, I want to fix that long term generationally. You got to be hungry right now so that we can fix it big term. You're like, no, I just really don't want them to be hungry right now, and I'm with you. I agree. I don't want them to be hungry right now either. I don't want them to be hungry right now, but at the same time, how do we interrupt the patterns? Because let's be very clear, for a country that always touts history, it's which history are we touting? Apparently, we don't care that people don't get to eat in this country.
Right.
And if you don't remember times like the Depression and other times where people did not eat in this country, you are bound to repeat it. Here we are.
Yeah, and it's all choice because I teach in my policy class about the
Mm,
child tax credit that was increased during COVID. And
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
single-handedly, that increase in the child tax credit that went up to in the 3,000s, I think, based on, for each child, reduced
Mm,
childhood poverty in this country by half. I forget. There are statistics out there. It was monumental, the dent that it made in child poverty in this country just by increasing the child tax credit. And then
wow.
that expanded tax credit expired and has not been since reinstituted. And so now it's back down in the 2000s. And this one big ugly bill that got passed this summer, I think, increased it to 2,200, but it was significantly lower than what it was right after COVID. And so childhood poverty has gone back up again. So it's a policy choice, right? Like, it's absolutely a choice that 42 million people in this country need SNAP, right? They need that supplemental nutrition program. Like, we could change that
Mm,
as a country, as a government, but the will is not there to do it, right? So
mm,
or if not the richest country in the world has has high mortality rates, shittiest healthcare, massive high percentage of childhood poverty, and we don't do anything about it, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
we can. That's what we can,
Absolutely
and we
can.
don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And instead,
Preventable.
to your earlier point, which makes me think of that book, Poverty by America, that you had read, and,
Yes.
the way that he kind of talked about Africa is that we do that. We look in Africa to all those countries in Africa and say they're in poverty, they're messed up. It's easy to do that. He does turn the lens inward, but he still has a piece of that in there, right? But we don't do that. We don't turn the lens inward. And if we actually did and did that consistently, we would know, more people would know that these are
Yes.
choices. These are not a fait accompli, right? This
Oh,
can
yeah.
be changed. Anyway,
This can be changed. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so I think as usual, we're pontificating on the issues that are systemic, but also reminding people don't sit there and not do anything about it, and
right,
don't allow people to feign that they don't have the power to do something about it,
right,
especially
right.
lawmakers, especially
Yep,
local, state, federal. No, don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe of, yeah, I sit on all these committees, so forth and so on, but I got to throw my hands up because there's nothing I can do about it. Excuse me. We elected you for the sole purpose of doing
yep,
something about it.
yep. Actually represent me. Yeah.
Hello. Exactly.
Mhm.
All right. Well, look, that's a wrap for this week's episode. We hope that if you're here in the US and about to enjoy Thanksgiving, please do so with your family, friends, loved ones, on your own, whatever you choose to do. We hope you have a really great day. But otherwise, oh, and look, if you're sitting there by yourself, go listen to some more episodes. Okay, go catch up. We got how many, Lisa? 200 plus now? Go
Yep, yep.
some more episodes. But we're really grateful to have you listening in. That's a wrap for this week. You can reach us on all social media and podcast apps at Unfazed Unedited. Email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com or just visit our website, unfazedpodcast.com, where everything is there, new and old shows. And so, if you like, you know, my cynicism, Lisa yelling into we do that regularly, okay? Like, subscribe, leave a review, or share with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. But otherwise, happy Thanksgiving, y'all.
All right. See you next week.